Good evening, YouTube. This is my 1985 Ferrari Mondial that I purchased a little under 2 months ago. And at the time, this was probably the cheapest running Mondial in the country. The reason that it was so cheap is because this car has suffered a lot of neglect. The previous owner before me, he purchased this car and he owned it for, I think, right around 8 months. And in that time period, he spent close to $20,000 to try to bring this car up mechanically because it had sat for so long. And I really believe this car is probably sat for over a decade, maybe even a couple decades. The engine and gearbox were both leaking like the Titanic, so they had to be resealed. The brakes were locked up, they had to be rebuilt. The fuel system was all gummed up, it had to be completely rebuilt. Pretty much any rubber component or plastic components such as lines, hoses, belts, they all had to be replaced. And a lot of little odds and ends. Total bill, I guess when it got so high, his wife finally made him sell it from what I understand. So I'm the next guy in line. Maybe you could actually say the next idiot in line. See, the body's actually pretty good. The only real damage here is this front spoiler. It looks like someone obviously misjudged an incline, but that's a pretty easy fix. Paint is pretty good shape. There's no major chips, there's no deep scratches, but it does need a pretty significant detailing. As you can tell, the paint's a little rough. It's got a lot of swirl marks, a little bit of oxidation. So I have my detailer. He's supposed to come, I believe, in a couple weeks. He's gonna try to do a full paint correction and then a ceramic coating on this car. Then after he does his thing, I'm gonna have this car sent back to my mechanic and I'm gonna have him give it a tune because right now it is running extremely rich. It's running so rich, in fact, that I really can't drive it because it actually stalls out. And actually, when it does stall out, it floods so bad, the only way that I can restart it immediately is to pull the fuel pump fuse, turn the car over to try to clear out the cylinders, which I don't imagine that's very good for the piston rings to do that, so I'm gonna keep the car parked for now. Interior is actually in pretty good shape. I believe this dash was probably redone at some point pretty recently because it doesn't have any shrinkage at all. There was a tear, well, there is a tear in the driver's seat cushion. So I had these custom seat covers made and actually look pretty good. So I think I'm just gonna leave them on and call it a day. Rear seats are pretty good. Do need to replace this panel right here, this panel cover I should say. All gauges work. These buttons here, none of them work at all. So I'm gonna take these buttons out and I'm gonna send them to a buddy of mine who he rebuilds electronics. And I'm gonna see if he can rebuild these because these buttons are about $400 to $800 a piece if I purchase them from Ferrari. AC does work. The heat also works. All these buttons work except for the fuel release door here. It does not work. So to open my fuel door, luckily there's just enough gap here. I can stick my finger down under here and just pop it open. So I guess that'll work for the time being. So as you can see, this car, I mean, it's a little rough. Actually, it's very rough, but it definitely has potential. So follow along as I restore this car to its former glory.